All right, and we are live. So welcome everyone. Today's guest, I have Becky Hoffmann with me. Becky is an actuary at Nationwide, and she's an E&S actuary, which we'll get into a little later. Becky and I worked together very briefly a while back, and then we were both part of the Arizona Actuarial Club. Because you made me join. No, I'm just kidding. You had me volunteer, and I was actually really glad that I did it.
But, I think everybody gets pressured into volunteering for that job.
That's true. That is true. So anyway, thanks for joining, Becky.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So to start things off, let's just kind of back up and how early on did you know that you wanted to be an actuary?
Well, it was not when I was like a kid or when I was in college even. After I graduated, I spent the first 4 years of my career as a math teacher. And I don't think I'd even heard of actuaries at that point. Although I do have a friend who swears she told me that I should be one. But after 4 years of teaching, I decided that that was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I actually applied to grad school in something totally unrelated. But while I was waiting to hear back, I started exploring other options, and I Googled like, what are good jobs for math people? And that's when I found out about the actuarial science field. And the more I read about it, the more it just, everything about it sounded literally perfect for me. So I pretty quickly changed my plans and started studying for my first exam.
What were you going to go to grad school for?
Physical anthropology.
Okay, wow. That's crazy. So you kind of heard about the actuarial thing a little later then. I actually interviewed someone, because most people I feel like heard about it a little bit later. I interviewed someone who was the chief actuary at Blue Cross, Audrey, and she knew from the time she was a kid she wanted to be an actuary.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. It like ran in the family because her dad was an actuary. So
yeah, you don't hear many stories like that.
Yeah, no, not many at all. So, but you did your undergrad at Harvard, correct?
Yes.
And what did you get your major in?
So the same subject there, they called it biological anthropology, but it was basically studying evolution.
Interesting. And so going through all that at Harvard, was that pretty, like, does Harvard live up to the name? Is it pretty tough? Or did you feel like, compare the actuarial exams to Harvard?
I would say, so I took some math classes at Harvard, and I would definitely say that those were harder. I thought I was going to be a math major at Harvard, and the classes that I took my freshman year helped convince me otherwise.
You're like, nope. Wow. So what math classes did you take there?
My freshman year, I took a year-long course that was linear algebra and multivariable calculus. It was proofs-based, and I remember I had a study group, thank God, because I don't think I would have made it through the problem sets otherwise. But I had actually previously taken a linear algebra course at Indiana University in my hometown when I was in high school, and the way that it was taught in those two classes was completely different. It like unrecognizable, maybe.
Wow.
Except for a few words, like eigenvectors.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that class was intense, and my dad was a math major when he was in college, and he told me that once that every person who is great at math at some point hits their wall where it stops being something that you just get, and it starts being something that you have to work at. And that was the year when I hit my wall.
Yeah, yep. I definitely remember hitting my wall too. It was like, wow, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah. So then after that, I took, I remember I took a real analysis course. Um, I also did this program to get a math teaching certificate. So I took like some classes on teaching math. I think I took some other math classes that I'm not remembering, but those are the ones that stick out the most.
Nice. And then your first actuarial job was you were waiting for results for grad school, and you heard about being an actuary. So you didn't end up going to grad school, right? You ended up taking the
No.
actuarial route. Okay, yeah.
Actually, I didn't end up getting into grad school, but I had already decided to go a different direction at that point. So that was good. It took the sting out of that a little bit.
That's very good. So where was your first actuarial job then?
It was at Nationwide, although at the time it was called Scottsdale Insurance Company.
That's okay. That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember if that was your first one or not. And you're still there, so it's a good company.
Yes, I like it.
And for anyone who's watching, she is an E&S actuary. And can you explain to everyone, because E&S I think is a topic that's maybe not discussed as much, or it's maybe a smaller space in terms of like the number of actuaries who are E&S actuaries. So could you give a little background on that?
Yeah, so I would say first I should clarify that that Nationwide is a property and casualty insurance company. So if you know your two main areas of actuarial work, I'm on the P&C side, and then E&S stands for excess and surplus lines insurance. So what we do there is kind of specialty insurance. It's mostly commercial insurance for businesses that either don't have sufficient loss history to go to a standard carrier, or maybe they have more unique insurance needs, like they need higher limits, or they want to get some excess insurance that'll cover them above the insurance that they get from another carrier. Or sometimes the type of business that they do, or the type of coverage that they want, is just riskier than what a standard insurer would want, but it's something that we will be willing to take on for a little bit more money usually.
Yep, that makes sense. So you're basically a subset of property and casualty. And would you say that pricing an E&S plan, is that quite a bit different than pricing a standard property or casualty plan?
I don't think it's too different. The principles are definitely the same. There might be some extra complications in this area. For example, if you're working with excess insurance, that is much longer tailed than a primary insurance policy. So you can't rely as much on like a standard loss development method using triangles, for example. You might have to do some more modeling, or employ some different methods to try to come up with your best estimate of ultimate values. The other difference at least at our E&S company is that we, because we're specialty insurance that not so many people need to buy, our data sets are usually much smaller and much more volatile than what you would see at a standard lines insurance carrier. So we don't have the ability to always do the most sophisticated or complicated statistical analysis that you might be able to do on a larger, more stable data set.
Right. So in that case, you don't have as much data, so you're throwing a dart at a dartboard and just making guesses. Or probably not quite.
We close the door before we do that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is interesting. I haven't really interviewed that many or any actually property casualty actuaries yet. You're the first one. I've interviewed mostly health actuaries. So in terms of getting into it, like most actuaries that I've talked to, have like kind of chose the route that they went because that's the first job they got. Was that similar for you? Is it like, did you kind of care what space you got into, or how did you go about that?
Yeah, it was definitely based on the job that I was able to land when I was trying to get into this field. I will say that Nationwide was the company that I wanted to work at the most in the Valley, so I was very happy to get that job. I had, when I was thinking about trying to become an actuary, I did some research on my own online. I tried to read about it, and then I contacted a few actuaries in the Valley, the Phoenix area, that whose emails I was able to find on a registry somewhere, and I asked if they would meet with me and discuss their career and maybe help me think through whether this would be a good choice for me or a viable choice for me. And one of the people that I contacted was at the time the chief actuary of Scottsdale Insurance Company, or Nationwide E&S. So that was Ken Levine, and he met me for coffee, and we had a great conversation, and he definitely promoted the P&C and the E&S lines of insurance and made that sound like a great opportunity, as well as Nationwide as a whole.
I mean, I'm sure with the property casualty side, similar to the health side, there's a lot of opportunity, and I mean, probably only growing. I think insurance in general is growing right now. So, do you feel like there's a lot of opportunity on that side?
Yeah, what I'm most aware of is what's happening in the Phoenix area, but we definitely feel like there's starting to be a lot more competition for talent in the Valley. We've had companies move in the last couple of years, companies build big new shiny facilities in the last couple of years, and we're definitely starting to see a little bit more rotation, I guess, of actuaries through different companies in the Valley as there's starting to be more of that competition.
Yeah, no, I believe that for sure. I mean, I was one of those rotating actuaries. Yeah, I was. So I worked with Becky very briefly when I was at Scottsdale Insurance, which is now Nationwide. Although I wasn't specifically an actuary at the time, I was more on the support team. And then I ended up going to Blue Cross Blue Shield, so I went into the health space, which kind of helped with my background in it. Scottsdale Insurance was a very brief jump for me, but that's how Becky and I originally met. But no, that's interesting. Do you feel like since Scottsdale Insurance was bought out by Nationwide, do you feel like it feels much different now, or is it very similar because you're kind of your own little section?
So actually, Scottsdale Insurance Company was always a part of Nationwide. Nationwide, Nationwide funded them. Nationwide funded them to start up in, I think it was about 35 years ago or so. And they were always part of the family, but up until about 3 or 4 years ago, there were many parts of Nationwide that had their own names and were run pretty independently, even though all of the results eventually rolled back up to Nationwide. So Scottsdale Insurance Company was one of those. We actually had multiple companies associated with us that were kind of the same situation. We had a Western Heritage Insurance Company that was our subsidiary, and also veterinary pet insurance. And so then, like I said, about 3 or 4 years ago, what happened was Nationwide decided to do a rebranding and kind of give every portion of the enterprise a Nationwide name, so that it would become clear to consumers that that all of these companies that they were interacting with were all a part of Nationwide. If you go to Nationwide for this product, you can also go to Nationwide for this product and for this product. It's kind of a cohesive whole that can serve all of your needs.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah. So
okay, I actually do kind of remember that now. I had forgotten though. So it was more of a rebranding than anything.
Yeah, yeah. But I will say that it has made a difference in the way that things are run and the way that things feel. At first, we kind of thought that maybe it was literally just a name change and not too much else would change, but there's been a lot more emphasis and it's become a lot easier to collaborate across different areas of the enterprise. We all keep in mind a lot more now that we're all part of one greater unit, and if we're working on something in this area, we can reach out to see if somebody in this other area has already approached that problem or has any hints for us.
Okay, that's awesome. You feel like at Nationwide, because you finished your fellowship while you were there, because I mean you started there, so yes. Do you feel like the studying was a good program there, and like how was your study experience? I guess you don't really have another company to compare it to, but how many years did it take you, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, it took me about 4.5 years from start to finish, so it went very quickly for me.
You were fast. You're smart. Impressive.
And I do think that the program at Nationwide was very good. I would say that on paper, it's pretty standard, right? We get our about actually, I don't know how much I am allowed to just say, but we get pretty much a standard number of study hours per exam. We get exam raises. We get exams and materials paid for that I think you would expect to find at pretty much any company. What makes a difference at Nationwide that you don't always find at every company is that we really put an emphasis on making sure that our associates are able to utilize those benefits and really get to take their study time and get to put their work on pause for some hours every week to make sure that they're making progress towards their credentials.
That's good. I was going to say, like, a lot of companies have policy, but then it's like, well, if you're working anything, in my opinion, if you're working anything over 40 hours a week, then what the study hours mean at that point? If you're working 45, 50, 55 hours, then it's like, well, okay, I can knock my 55 down to 48 this week or whatever,
Yeah.
But that's good. It's good to be able to get those. So what's your secret for finishing in 4.5 years for those who are watching this that are just getting started?
Just to get through the material as quickly as you can, then go through the material again, and then do as many practice problems as you can. I don't know. I used the Internet Actuary. Huh?
Were you able to maintain any sort of a life outside of work and studying, or was that about it?
Yeah, I mean, I had some fun too.
Okay, that's good. I hear people say like there's life, there's work, and there's exams, and only 2 of those can survive. And I kind of found that to be true actually, but yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I also had some good friends who were studying at the same time as me, and sometimes the same exams as me. So sometimes I mixed up the studying and the social time a little bit, which probably helped avoid some burnout to some extent.
Yeah, that's actually really nice to have people that are kind of going through the same thing. So, and then I wanted to ask you, like, what does, for someone who's watching, who's interested in the profession, or maybe thinking about, like, which type of field they want to go into, like, what does your daily life look like? When do you wake up? Like, are you in a cubicle? Do you get lunch breaks? Can you just give people an idea of what the life in Becky Hoffmann looks like?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, this this morning I had my alarm set for 5 a.m. Because lately I've been taking my dog for a walk before work, or trying to take my dog for a walk before work. It seems to, on average, be a lot more successful for me than trying to walk her in the evenings. But this morning it was not successful because I just laid in bed until 7 o'clock. So so my start and end times every day are pretty flexible. In my team, we are able to arrive at work, between 7 and 9 on a kind of daily basis, and leave between 3:30 and 5:30-ish, kind of according to whenever you got in. Although there's even like flexibility beyond that if you have an appointment or something. My time at work is at this point is pretty heavy on meetings. I would say it's rare for me to have a day with no meetings where I can just get work done all day. And probably at least a third of my week is spent in meetings. And so like today I had about 2 hours of meetings, 2.5 hours of meetings in the morning, and then another hour or so in the afternoon. For lunch, yeah, absolutely. No lunch breaks at Nationwide. No, for lunch, again, it's kind of like the start and end times. Make sure you're getting your job done, and in between that, you can eat your lunch and live your life. I actually usually I live pretty close to the office, so I usually drive home for lunch and let my dog out, and then head back.
Some people don't get lunch breaks. It depends on the job you have. I mean, I know a lot of people that'll just work from their desk during lunch. So it's nice to actually get up and move around and eat.
Well, when I took this job after being a teacher for 4 years, one of the things I was most excited about was that I was allowed to just go to the bathroom, to go use the restroom whenever I wanted to.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. That is funny. Do you feel like teaching kind of helped you with, having to speak in front of people, helped you with your communication skills and with what you've done in the actuarial space?
Yeah, teaching helped me become better at explaining things, better at evaluating whether somebody was understanding my explanation, or whether their eyes were glazing over and they're just waiting for me to stop talking. So I definitely think that it helps when I'm trying to explain actuarial concepts to a non-actuarial audience, and it also very much helped me become more comfortable with public speaking, which was something I was not happy to be doing before teaching, and you just get over that after your entire job is speaking in front of a classroom of 30 kids every day. So that's very helpful when I'm doing presentations or leading meetings at work. I'm a lot more comfortable with those situations, I think, than I would be otherwise.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And anyway, sorry, I kind of digressed there, but to go back to your day, you kind of have a lunch break, and then you kind of have morning meetings, afternoon meetings. Do you feel like you're able to zone in and focus when like in between, or does it feel like that time is so short that it's tough to do that?
Yeah, I gotta say that it is hard for me to really get into a lot of work, and especially if it's a more complicated project. If I have less than an hour and a half or so to dig into it, so I try to actually block off time on my calendar so that I have longer stretches of time, or to schedule as many meetings as I can on a single day. So I just have meetings all day, but then the next day, maybe I have longer stretches of time to work. And then when I have the shorter amounts of time, I try to knock off things that don't require much thought, like, oh, there's a couple emails I need to reply to or things like that.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that's been the hardest thing for me in my career is like when there's a meeting coming up and it's like you're trying to have a block of time to think through something. It's hard to interrupt that process where it's like, you're starting to think about the meeting coming up and then you have the meeting and then you have to transition back into what you were doing and all of that takes time.
Plus,
So,
your meeting might have come with, 2 or 3 quick follow-up tasks that you need to fit in now.
Exactly. So no, that's interesting. Well, that's good. It's good to hear about the your daily life and that you actually it sounds like you're able to take a lunch break. You're able to leave at a reasonable time, at least usually, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, and then I wanted to ask you, since as I mentioned, Becky and I, we were both part of the Arizona Actuarial Club. We were both officers on that. Like, have you done any other extracurricular type things like that? And what would you say to people watching? Do you think that those types of things are beneficial for actuaries?
Mm-hmm. I haven't been involved in so the opportunities in this area for that kind of thing. I would say we have the Arizona Actuarial Club. We also have a P&C focused club called CADS, Casualty Actuaries of the Desert States. So those are the two main opportunities to get involved locally with the actuarial community. And I haven't been involved in CADS yet, although I would be willing to do that. It sounds like it would be fun. I have been pretty active with the actuarial science program at Arizona State University, which is located just down in Tempe, about 20 minutes away or so. The program there is really maybe only 4 years old or so, and Nationwide has been a huge supporting partner of that program since it got started, and we have definitely benefited from the actuarial students coming out of that program being available. I happen to lead our internship program for the actuarial division at Nationwide E&S. So I have a particular interest in the actuarial program at ASU because we're able to draw some of our interns from there, and they have even actually organized their classes to be just concentrated on just 2 days a week, so that students are available for internships during the school year as well. So anyway, in the involvement with that school, I've done things like organized a nationwide night at ASU. Many companies in the Valley do this, to go to ASU and spend an evening doing some kind of fun, somewhat actuarial related activities to get to know the students and promote the company as a good place to work. I just signed up to volunteer for a mock interview night that they're holding next month. And
you do a really good job of kind of networking and connecting with companies. I mean, to be a student going through that program, it's like you're kind of hooked up with like all these great networking events and opportunities, I feel like.
Oh yeah, the students there are very motivated and very driven to do well, but the school also has put in a ton of effort to position them well and give them opportunities to network and get to know the actuarial business community. It's a great relationship that benefits all of us.
That's awesome. So I have a final serious question for you, and then 2 just fun questions before we end this. But the final serious question is for since we're talking about students, for those that are going into the field that are either in school for it or are interested in it. what is your top piece of advice for because you've had multiple years of experience now, something that maybe you wish you would have known, or something that could help someone watching this?
I think that the most all-purpose piece of advice that I would give, I think, would be, be curious and ask questions. If you are in school and you're still deciding whether this is the right field for you, find people who are actuaries, go talk to them, be interested in what they do, learn if it's the right fit for you. If you've already decided on this field and you're looking for jobs, then talk to people about their jobs and their companies and learn about the differences in working in one field versus another, or working at one company versus another, and try to get an idea of what type of company that you want to end up at, if consulting is the right option for you. I wouldn't advise consulting until you're done with exams. It's much easier to pass exams at an insurance company that's a little bit slower paced. And then once you get your first job, then you should still be asking a ton of questions, because there's just so much to learn. And there's no easier time to ask questions than when you're first starting out.
I would agree with asking questions. Like, I mean, I remember probably the dumbest question that I ever asked to this day, but I'm actually really glad I asked it. This is embarrassing to say, but I worked for CVS. This was actually a long time ago, because I've worked for CVS twice. But when I first started there, like, I knew nothing about the prescription industry, and I didn't know that RX, the symbol RX, stood for prescription. I literally did not know that, and I was reading something and I saw RX, and I remember asking my boss, and she looked at me and just shook her head, and I'm like, I didn't know that. And then I think at first she was like, why do we hire this guy? And then later on, I proved myself, and they really liked me there. So I ended up being okay. But I think it's good to ask questions. You got to know that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, two final fun things. I know you like to travel a lot. What is the favorite place you've ever traveled to?
I think I'm gonna say about 2 years ago, I took a trip with some good friends to Spain, and we traveled. I joined them for a portion of their trip along the southern coast of Spain. We spent most of the time in Seville, and that was awesome. It was super fun. I think that my preferences are like very in line with a culture where people take, a 2-hour nap every afternoon.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree with that.
So that was a really fun experience. Yeah, I would love to go back there.
That's amazing. And then favorite restaurant, that's the second question. And it can be anywhere you've traveled, or it could be local.
Well,
if you want to go there.
I'm gonna go with when I was a kid, my family lived in Japan for a while, in Tokyo, and there was a restaurant there called Tonki that served it only served one thing. So you'd walk in and they would just ask you how many instead of what do you want, or like handing you a menu. And they serve tonkatsu, so it's like a breaded pork cutlet that's fried and cut up, and then there's this kind of sweet sauce that they put over it, and served with a bowl of rice and some shredded cabbage, and that is what it is, and it's delicious.
Amazing. That makes it simple. Just how many? I like that. That is awesome. Well, I think that's all we got time for. Just so everyone that's watching knows, I'm trying to kind of shorten these up to be closer to 30 minutes. So that's why we're ending this one a little bit shorter. And thank you, Becky, so much for joining and for your time. I'm sure people will find this fascinating, especially being in the E&S space. I feel like, it's an interesting area that maybe isn't talked about as much. So,
Yeah, well, thank you. This was a lot of fun to chat with you.
Definitely. And Becky is out from Arizona. I am out from Washington, and we will see you all next time. Next time, I'll be announcing it soon. On Monday, I have an actuary in the health space that'll be on. So anyway, we will see you all next time.